Hey everyone, this is a response to a video by 1T Mock, brilliantly entitled Relativism and Homos. Note the fun use of the apostrophe there. In the video, 1T Mock and one of YouTube's other resident street preachers, 5 Point Baptist, babble to one another about, among other things, the United States Constitution, civil rights, homosexuals, and
They do in the homosexual playing field?
whatever that is. There is so much that is just blatantly incorrect and ridiculous in the 6 or so minutes this video goes on that it would be impossible, and really it's unnecessary, to address all of it. Therefore, I'm going to zero in on one bit, namely 1T Mock's conception of legal rights, a conception that's actually prevalent among many Christians and other religious believers. That is, that our legal rights ultimately are, and indeed must be, God-given. I should just note here at the top that 1T Mock claims that the Constitution talks about inalienable rights. In fact, it does not. Talk about inalienable rights appears in the Declaration of Independence, an important American document to be sure, but one that, unlike the Constitution, lacks the force of law. It's not uncommon for people to mistakenly attribute various of the Declaration's claims to the Constitution. Most common among the misattributions are the bit about inalienable rights, pursuit of happiness, and how human beings are endowed by their Creator with certain rights. None of this appears in the Constitution. 1T Mock asks,
Well, what is a right?
now, this is actually a good question, the answer to which can be complicated. As legal scholars Stephen Holmes and Cass Sunstein note in their book, The Cost of Rights, quote, "The term rights has many reference and shades of meaning." Now, I'm mindful of the time limit here, and I want to keep things as straightforward as possible, so I'm going to confine this to legal rights and turn again to Professors Holmes and Sunstein. A legal right is an interest or claim that a politically organized society uses its legal system and other collective resources to protect and defend. It may be a protected interest or claim against the state or against other persons or entities. So, for example, I have a right as against my landlord to the quiet enjoyment of my residence. And I have a right as against the state not to have soldiers quartered in my home without my consent during peacetime. See the Third Amendment. In American law, there are various types of rights. For example, there are constitutional rights, which are rights recognized and protected by the federal Constitution and by the constitutions of the several states. And there are statutory rights, which are rights created and protected by statute. That is, in ordinary law enacted via the ordinary legislative process. Among the statutory rights Americans enjoy is the right against employment discrimination on the basis of various characteristics irrelevant to one's ability to perform a job. For example, one's ethnicity, gender, religious belief or lack thereof, and in some jurisdictions, one's sexual orientation and gender identity. Although employment discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity remains legal in most American states. Interestingly enough, in his video, 1T Mock complains about the laws that protect against employment discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation. He opines that this violates an employer's right not to hire a person, specifically a person who happens to be homosexual, because the employer disagrees with the person's, quote, philosophy. I'm just wondering here, has homosexuality gone from being a, quote, lifestyle to a, quote, philosophy, according to the members of the religious right? In any case, if 1T Mock wishes to be consistent here, he would also have to support an employer's right not to employ Calvinists, because the employer disagrees with their philosophy. Something tells me he's unlikely to be on board for that. It's 1T Mock's claim that in order for there to be any legal rights, there must be a God, the Christian God, not surprisingly, who is the universal authoritative lawgiver. He opines that any rights claim presupposes the existence of this universal authoritative lawgiver. Now, this claim, popular as it is in certain Christian circles and other religious circles, just betrays various levels of ignorance and an adversarial relationship with reality. For example, a survey of the rights recognized and protected by the Bill of Rights does not reveal a catalog of rights readily associated with the Christian God. Freedom of religion, for example. Wherever is Yahweh shown to be an advocate of that, much less a giver of the right? It should be remembered that this is the God who, among other things, instructed his devotees to kill people who practiced different religions, a God who, through those purported to be his spokespeople, said wrath was being revealed and visited upon people who didn't practice Yahweh's religion. I invite one T-Mock and any other religious believer who shares his view about so-called God-given rights to show me where Yahweh went from that to being a civil libertarian about religion. How about the Eighth Amendment's right not to be subjected to cruel and unusual punishment? Yahweh repeatedly commands his devotees to stone people for various things, one of the most violent, painful methods of execution imaginable. Yahweh is portrayed sending venomous snakes among his own people to punish and kill them for being insufficiently devout. He's shown commanding and engaging in genocide, the slaughter of children, and the eternal punishment in flames of those who don't believe in him. Where exactly is the basis for the God-givenness of the right to be protected against cruel and unusual punishment? What about the constitutionally protected right to marry the person of one's choosing? Please. Yahweh has loads of rules against this, and one of his spokespeople even characterized marriage itself as a mere concession to those with uncontrollable sexual desires, stating that those who remain single are better off and more devoted to Yahweh than their married counterparts. God-given right? What's the basis for that claim? Certainly not the Bible. In addition to the fact that most of the rights some Christians claim to be God-given are, at best, opposed to Yahweh's dictates and actions, American jurisprudence does not rely on the proposition that our rights are God-given. For example, among jurists, one of the leading conceptions of our fundamental or most basic rights is that they are inherent in the concept of liberty itself, that we wouldn't truly have a free society unless people had these rights. One doesn't need a God for that, and one certainly cannot look to the collection of texts purportedly inspired by the Christian God for an understanding of what a free society looks like. Quite the opposite. As legal scholar Noah Feldman puts it in his book Divided by God, quote, "The revolutionary American idea was that the people were sovereign. We are the lawgivers. This new model of popular sovereignty and the government that emerged from it resulted in, among other things, severing the institutional link between government and religion because no one had authority to compel another in matters of religion. The model also inspired Thomas Jefferson to write in 1786, quote, "Our civil rights have no dependence on religious opinions, any more than our opinions in physics or geometry." The proposition that our rights are, and indeed must be, God-given is, in a word, nonsense. Thanks a lot.